Hi everybody, welcome back on Study Room, and today we are going to study about chapter 5, that is democratic rights. Alright, so the first case study is a prison in Guantanamo Bay. So the US forces picked up 600 people from all over the world and detained them in Guantanamo Bay prison without trial or informing their governments. So, Guantanamo Bay Detention Camp is a United States military prison located within Guantanamo Bay Naval Base in Cuba. In most cases, the government of their countries were not even asked or even informed about their imprisonment. So, the government said that they were the enemies of the US and linked them to the 11th September 2001 attack on New York. Families of prisoners, medias, or even UN representatives were not allowed to talk to them or meet them. The US Army arrested them, interrogated them, and decided whether to keep them there or not. There was no trial before any magistrate in the US, nor could these prisoners approach courts in their own country. Alright, so now we have Amnesty International report. Amnesty International is an international human rights organization found that prisoners were being tortured in violation of US laws and international treaties. So, anti-Guantanamo Bay demonstration organized by Amnesty International took place, and it protests against inhuman treatment of the prisoners. Alright. So many prisoners had tried protesting against these conditions by going on hunger strike. Prisoners were not released even after they were officially declared not guilty. An independent inquiry by the UN support these findings. The UN Secretary General said that the prison in Guantanamo Bay should be closed down. The US government refused all these pleas. Overall, in this case, a government of one country denied rights to citizens of another country. Now we have citizens' right in Saudi Arabia. The country is ruled by a hereditary king who selects the legislature as well as executive. There is no freedom of religion and women are subjected to many public restrictions. Now we have ethnic massacre in Kosovo. So Kosovo, officially the Republic of Kosovo, is partially recognized state in southeastern Europe. Serbs are the majority in this area, and a narrow-minded Serb nationalist that was known as Milosevic had won the election, and Milosevic wanted the Serbs to dominate the country. This was one of the worst instances of killing based on ethnic prejudices. Alright, in recent times. And finally, several other countries intervened to stop these massacres. Milosevic lost power and was tried by International Court of Justice for crimes against humanity. This was a province of Yugoslavia before it split. In this province, the population was overwhelmingly ethnic Albanian. Alright, but in the entire country, Serbs were in majority. So Serb leaders thought that the ethnic minorities like Albanians should either leave the country or accept the dominance of the Serbs, and when they did nothing, then the massacre started. Alright, so now we are studying about what are rights. So rights are the claims of a person over other fellow beings, over the society, over the government. These are the reasonable claims of person recognized by state and sanctioned by law. So a right is possible when you make a claim that is equally possible for others. You cannot have a right that harms or hurt others. They should be such that can be made available to others in an equal measure, and rights should be followed by some duties. Citizens can approach courts to protect their laws, their rights, and when the society recognizes these claims, and they are written into law, they acquire real forces. Otherwise, they might remain merely as natural or moral rights. Why do we need rights in a democracy? This is very important questions. In a democracy, every citizens have the right to vote and right to elect the government. For democratic elections to take place, it is necessary that citizens should have the right to express their opinion, form political parties, and take part in political activities. So, rights are necessary for very sustenance of democracy. It ensures democratic elections. It protects minorities from the oppression of majority. It avoids misuse of power by the government. Now we have different rights in our Indian constitution. So this is our Constitution of India. In India, the rights are mentioned in the Constitution. Some rights which are essential to our life are given a special status and are called as fundamental rights. So the preamble, the first page of our Constitution talks about securing for all its citizens equality, liberty and justice. Fundamental rights puts these into effect, these promises into effect, and they are an important basic features of India's constitution. Now we have right to equality, article 14 to 18. So the constitution grants equality to all citizens in the eyes of law. No discrimination can be made on the grounds of birth, caste, religion and gender. The constitution also bans untouchability and calls it a cognizable offence. Alright. So every citizen shall have access to public places like shops, restaurants, hotels and cinema halls. Similarly, there should be no restrictions with regards to use of well, tanks, bathing ghats, roads, playgrounds. Alright, so all citizens have equality of opportunity in matters relating to employment, appointment in any position of government. No citizen shall be discriminated against birth, caste, religion, class, gender, race or creed, anything like that. So now we have right to freedom. Freedom means absence of constraints. People cannot exercise their freedom in such a manner that violate others' right to freedom. Freedom is not unlimited force to do whatever one wants and cause public nuisances or disorder. Accordingly, the government can impose a certain reasonable restrictions on our freedoms in the larger interest of the society. So, right to freedom is subjected to reasonable restrictions. Freedom is the absence of interference in our affairs by others, be it other individuals or the government. There is freedom of speech and expression. There is the freedom of assembly in a peaceful manner. You can move freely throughout and reside in the country. You can practice whichever profession you like or the occupation you want. Now we have freedom of speech and expressions. So the right to express opinions freely by the words of mouths, writing, printing or art. However, this does not allow to incite violence or defame others. So freedom to publicize your views through a pamphlet, magazine, newspaper or throughout painting, poetry or songs is all well and good. However, people cannot use this freedom to instigate violence against others and cannot use it to rebel against the government. Otherwise, it might lead to sedition charges. Neither can they use it to defame others by saying false or mean things that can cause damage to person's reputation. Alright, so no defamation should be done under freedom of speech and expressions. Now we have freedom to assemble and form unions. So citizens have the freedom to hold meetings, processions, rallies, demonstrate any issue. So citizens can form associations, for example, different trade unions and different associations of campaigns against corruption. But this should not lead to public disorder or breach of peace in society. Those who participate in these activities and meetings should not carry weapons with them. Alright, these things should be kept in mind. Freedom to travel and reside, it is very easy. We have freedom to travel to any part of the country. We are free to reside and settle in any parts of the territory of India. So this right allows lakhs of people to migrate from villages to towns, from poorer to prosperous regions and big cities. Now we have freedom of life and liberty. It includes that a person has a right to be informed of the reasons for their arrest and detention. First thing, they should be produced before the nearest magistrate within 24 hours of arrest. Person has a right to consult a lawyer or engage a lawyer for his defense. So these 3 points are really very important from the exam point of view, because this might comes for short note. Now we have right against exploitation. So the constitution mentions 3 specific evils and declares these illegal. Referred to the term traffic. Traffic here means selling and buying of human beings, usually women, for immoral purposes. Alright. Begar, the second thing is begar, that is forced labor, and third thing is child labor. Once a right to liberty and equality is granted, it follows that every citizen has a right not to be exploited. Yet the constitution makers thought it was necessary to write down certain clear provisions to prevent exploitations of the weaker section of the society. Now we have right to freedom of religion. As a secular state, India does not confer any privilege based on religion. Every person has a right to profess, practice and propagate the religion he or she believes in. But a right to propagate one religion, however, does not mean that the person has a right to compel another individual to convert into his religion by means of force, inducement or allurement. Alright. Now we have cultural and educational rights. So any section of citizens with a distinct language or cultural have a right to conserve it. Admission to educational institutions maintained by the government or receiving government aid, this should be maintained. There is a right to establish and administer educational institution. So when you have a right to conserve language, you can take the example of Tulu language. In this point wants to elaborate that there should not be any kind of discrimination based on language and religion involved in government institutions. So no discrimination policy is followed. Third one is communities can set up private institutions as well. All right. For educational institutions, they can have a different cultural education institute as well. Now we have how can we secure these rights. So as per the right to constitutional remedies, we can approach courts in the case of violation of rights. The Supreme Court and High Court issue writs for the enforcement of fundamental rights. So it is possible that sometimes our rights may be violated by fellow citizens, private bodies or the government. So when any of these rights are violated, we can seek remedy through courts. If it is a fundamental right, we can directly approach High Court, Supreme Court of the state. Alright. And fundamental rights are guaranteed against the actions of the legislature, executive and the authorities instituted by the government. And there can be no law or action that violates fundamental rights. Now we have PIL. What are these? So one can write to judges even on a postcard. Alright. So any person or group of person can go to the court in case of violation of fundamental rights if it is of social or public interest. So these are public interest litigation. So the court will take up the matter if the judges find it in the public interest. Alright. So very first PIL case was Hussain-Ara Khatun. Hussain-Ara Khatun versus State of Bihar. So what happened that PIL was filed, then the judge himself took the cognizance of the case and then acted upon it. Alright, so this can also be done to seek the attention of the judge. Now we have NHRC. What are NHRC? NHRC is National Human Rights Commission. it is an independent commission established in the year 1933 to make credible inquiries into any case of violation of human rights. It has the power to summon witnesses, question government officials. So NHRC focuses on helping the victims securing their human rights. These includes all the rights guarantees to the citizens by the constitutions. For NHRC, human rights also includes a right mentioned by the UN-sponsored international treaties that India has signed. NHRC cannot by itself punish the guilty. That is the responsibility of courts. NHRC is there to make independent, credible inquiry into any case of violation of human rights. So these inquiries are really very important when it comes to different criminal cases. Any citizens of India can write a letter to address true complaints against violation of human rights, and NHRC would act upon it. Alright, so expanding scope of rights. How can we expand the scope of rights? So the expanding scope of rights sometimes leads to expansion in the legal rights that the citizens can enjoy. The right to education, freedom of press and right to information are some examples. These are the legal rights, but they are not fundamental rights. Alright, so government are responsible for providing free and compulsory education to children up to the age of 14 years. And Parliament has enacted a law giving the right to information to the citizens. This act was made under the fundamental right of freedom of thought and expressions. So the Supreme Court has also expanded the meaning of the right to life, including the right to food, and the right to property is not a fundamental right now. Alright. Initially, right to property was a fundamental right, but now, no. It is not a fundamental right now. Right to vote in election is an important constitutional right, or you can say legal right, but it is not a fundamental right. So human rights are universal moral claims that may or may not have been recognized by law. With the expansion of democracy all over the world, there is a greater pressure on government to accept these claims. Some international conventions have also contributed to the expansion of these rights. So rights in South Africa. Alright, so South Africa, it got independence very late, and it has also different sets of rights, fundamental rights that occurred in that was followed and accepted in South Africa. There was right to privacy, right to an environment that is not harmful to health or well-being, right to have access to adequate housing, right to have access to healthcare services, sufficient food and water. Alright. So International Covenant on Economic, Social and Cultural Rights. So International Covenant recognizes many rights that are not directly a part of fundamental rights in the Indian constitutions. This has not yet become an international treaty, but human rights activists all over the world see this as a standard of human rights. So now we are going to see and look upon what the standards of human rights. This would include right to work, right to safe and healthy working conditions, right to adequate standards of living, right to social security insurance, right to health, right to education. Alright. So today we have discussed different rights and violation of rights in different countries, and how South Africa or the Guantanamo Bay experience and the case study we have discussed, and we have discussed how different rights and fundamental rights function in our country. And we have also discussed in details about right to equality, right to freedom, right to right against exploitation, cultural rights, educational rights. So these are all you need to remember from exam point of view. We'll meet again in the next video with questions, answers of this topic as well as quick revision. So the first question asks, which of the following is not an instance, alright, of an exercise of a fundamental right? Workers from Bihar go to the Punjab to work on the farms. Christian missions set up a chain of missionary schools. Men and women government employees get the same salary. Parents' property is inherited by their children. So D is the answer because now right to property is a legal right, not a fundamental right. Alright. Now moving to the next question. Which of the following freedom is not available to an Indian citizen? Freedom to criticize the government, freedom to participate in armed revolution, freedom to start a movement to change the government, freedom to oppose the central values of the constitution. So this is what is the correct answer because the question is not available. So participating in armed revolution is not available, and you cannot incite violence in the society. Alright, so this is the correct answer. Moving on to third question. Which of the following rights is available under the Indian Constitution? Right to work, right to adequate livelihood, right to protect one's culture, right to privacy. So is available right to protect one's culture. It is available. Alright. Now we have the question 4. Name the fundamental right under which each of the following right falls. Freedom to propagate one's religion. Right to freedom of religion. Right to freedom of religion. Right to life. Right to freedom, you can say. Abolition of untouchability. Right to equality. Ban on bonded labor. Right against exploitation. Alright, all the things we have done, and you can all jot it down it somewhere because we have explained each and everything in detail. Alright, moving on to this question. Which of the statement about the relationship between democracy and rights is more valid? Give reasons for your choice. Every country that is a democracy gives rights to its citizens. Every country that gives rights to its citizens is a democracy. Giving rights is good, but it is not necessary for a democracy. So, answer A is correct because every country that is a democracy gives rights to its citizens. Do you understand it? That for a country to be democratic, it has to give rights to its citizens. And these rights should be protected at any cost, as well as other features involves like free and fair elections. Alright, so there is a big circle of democracy and a small circle of rights within it. But the B option suggests every country that gives rights to its citizen is a democracy. Like the bigger circle is rights and then there is democracy. So it's not the case. Sometimes some countries do give rights, but they do not conduct free and fair elections. So they cannot be called a democracy. And only just because you give rights, then only you are democracy? No. You cannot say that. Giving rights is good, but it is not necessary for a democracy. To certain extent, no, this statement is entirely incorrect. Because for a democracy, you have to give rights to the people. They are saying giving rights is good, but it is not necessary for a democracy. No, giving rights is mandatory. It is necessary for a democracy. So all the choices you have understood, the answer is A option, and I've also given the appropriate reason for this option. All right, moving to our revision. The examples of Guantanamo Bay prison, Saudi Arabia, and the atrocity in Kosovo are some examples of life without rights. A right is possible when you make a claim that is equally possible for others. In a democracy, every citizen has a right to vote and right to be elected to government. Alright, we have discussed it. Now we have fundamental rights. It includes right to equality, right to freedom, right against exploitation, right to freedom of religion, cultural and educational rights, right to constitutional remedies. Article 32, and you have writ petitions in it. Fundamental rights are the sources of all rights. Our constitution and law offers a wider range of rights. There are other rights as well as fundamental rights. What are other rights? You can have legal rights, like right to vote is not a fundamental right, but it is a legal right. Right to property is also a legal right. All right. So now we come to the end of our chapter. We have discussed about each and every right in detail, be it equality, be it freedom, be it right against exploitation. We have also discussed various countries which are without rights, and we have also discussed about Amnesty International, how they outraged these disturbances and raised their voices against these organizations. All right. So this is all you need to know about this chapter, democratic rights. And the second thing is, be prepared for the short answers regarding your right to constitutional remedies, which is the heart and soul of the constitution. With this, we come to the end of the chapter. Thank you all, and thank you all for having me on Study Room.